An amazing revelation. A mountain man uncovers a hidden truth amidst a drunken father's cries. Jake trudged through the dense woods, muscles aching, the weight of his lumberjack's axe heavy on his shoulder. Each swing was a catharsis, yet the shadows of home loomed larger than the towering pines. At 30, the chains of responsibility felt unbreakable, especially with a father who had become a ghost, haunting their small Colorado town with slurred words and empty promises. Jake's heart was as solid as the timber he worked, but inside, a tempest whirled, filled with resentment and longing for a father he barely recognized. As dusk painted the sky deep purple, he heard unmistakable voices drifting through the crisp air. Curiosity pulled him closer, feet moving quietly over a carpet of fallen leaves. What he found chilled him to the core. A confrontation between his father and Bert, an old family friend. Their heated exchange sliced through the stillness, echoing off stony cliffs. An inheritance, buried beneath layers of shame, land his grandfather had fought for, lost to the clutches of corrupted power. "You're a disgrace," Bert spat, his incredulous tone reverberating against the trees. A hollow emptiness filled Jake's chest. His grandfather had stood tall, embodying strength and resilience, unlike the man before him, reduced to a sobbing heap of regret. Memories flooded in, of a proud man, a revered figure now muddled by despair. Could Jake bear the weight of this new truth? Should he expose his father's cowardice further, or protect the illusion of family loyalty? The answers clawed at him, even as his hands trembled around the axe handle. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days crawled by, each one heavy with doubt. The trees whispered secrets, merging with his racing thoughts. Seek the truth, let it bleed the family wounds dry, or cover the scars with lies to avoid pain. He found himself wandering deeper into the forest, searching for the remnants of his grandfather's legacy. Each step was a battle between his desire for healing and the loyalty that bound him to his broken father. Would this knowledge bring peace or ruin the last shreds of connection between them? The accumulated tension coiled within him, every rustle of the wind swirling memories of his father's drunken rants. The fight against the flood of despair built a monster within, fueled by anger and confusion. Jake's breaths came faster, a storm of anguish brewing. One moment he wanted to shield his father, the next he craved confrontation. That night, the cold starlit sky offered no answers, just the haunting cry of unresolved conflict as he stumbled homeward. The ground beneath him solid yet unyielding, blooded roots tangling around undecided feet. As he neared his cabin, he could feel the gnawing emotional pull and the danger of unresolved truths, threatening to engulf everything he held dear. Jake clenched his fists, staring at the door to his home, dread coiling within. What awaited him inside? More turmoil, or a possibility for clarity? Bound by the weight of history, he stood there, ready to confront the man he had loved, yet loathed. In the sharp silence that followed, anticipation hung heavy in the air, an electric tension echoing through the mountains. Would he ignite a path to healing, or unleash chaos into the fragile bond of their lives? Jake stood motionless before the door, heart pounding in cadence with the rush of thoughts swirling in his mind. The weight of his father's failures settled like a stone in his gut. With every passing second, he felt the tug of his grandfather's spirit urging him to stand firm, to reclaim the lost legacy buried beneath decades of shame. He had to confront his father, not out of spite, but to unearth the truth that had been stifling both of them for too long. His hand hesitated on the doorknob. In that moment, he envisioned a different future, one where liberation was possible, the freedom to redefine his family's narrative. He took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped inside, met with the familiar odor of whiskey and stale regret. "Jake?" His father's voice broke through the haze, frail, yet charged with unexpected urgency. The old man sat slumped on the couch, eyes bleary but somehow agitated. The shame of their shared past hovered between them, a tangible ghost. "Dad, we need to talk," Jake declared, the steadiness in his own voice surprising him. He took a seat across from his father, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on the space they occupied. The uncomfortable silence stretched, filled only by the ticking clock marking the passage of lost time. "I didn't mean for you to hear that," his father murmured, avoiding eye contact. "Bert's always been bitter. You know how it is." There it was, the instinctive defense mechanism. Jake felt the urge to recoil, to hide from the pain long buried beneath the accusations. But he had come too far to back down. "You can't keep dodging the truth. Grandma and Grandpa fought for what was ours, Dad. You let it slip away." His father flinched at those words, the weight of regret swirling in his bloodshot eyes. "What do you want from me? I'm not your father anymore." Each insult, each admission of defeat, stung like a whip, but Jake leaned into the discomfort. "I need to understand. What happened to you? Where did you lose yourself?" The question hung heavily, a desperate plea for connection. Pain flickered across his father's features. The mask of denial began to crumble, revealing glimpses of vulnerability underneath. "I wanted to be like him," he admitted, voice caught in a tremor. "When he lost everything, I didn't know how to pick up the pieces." "This isn't about him anymore," Jake pressed, leaning forward, his own frustration giving way to a budding compassion. "This is about you. What do you want to do? Will you keep pretending the past doesn't exist, or will you fight for what could still be?" For a moment, the air in the room shifted. A crack appeared in the wall of defensiveness. Jake could almost see a flicker of acknowledgement behind the layers of his father's brokenness. He wanted to believe that there was still a chance, that they could forge a new path together. But the walls of bitterness and fear were high. His father's eyes dimmed once more, retreating behind a shield of memories that were too daunting to face. "I don't know how to fight anymore, Jake." Frustration boiled within him, mixing with empathy. "But that's just it. You can learn. You can choose to change." The longing in his voice echoed off the walls, urging his father to find the courage that had eluded him for so long. There was a flicker of defiance in his father's eyes, a new determination beginning to stir. But would he embrace it? Or would he retreat back into the comfort of despair? Jake's heart raced. The path ahead remained uncertain, a precarious balance between healing and confrontation. Yet for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope, a potential for their shared redemption. Would this moment catalyze a transformation, or would his father's fear drown out the possibility? The truth was at their fingertips, waiting to be seized or lost forever. As silence enveloped them, the tension thickened, grounding them in a moment that could usher in change or shatter their fragile bond. Would they emerge together, or would the growing divide leave them more isolated than ever? Jake's heart pounded as he felt both the weight of expectation and the flickering hope for his father's redemption. The room felt smaller, the stale air thickened by unaddressed grievances. He observed his father, who seemed to shrink further into himself, hiding beneath layers of self-loathing. The man who once towered in his memories now appeared fragile, broken by the weight of choices that only time could mend. "I can't change the past, Jake," his father finally murmured, voice barely above a whisper, dripping with despair. "What's done is done." "No," Jake shot back, more fiercely than he intended, adrenaline coursing through him. "You can't use the past as an excuse to give up. You still have a choice. You can still fight." He searched his father's face, hungrily looking for that flicker of resolve that had ignited moments ago, but it seemed to fade as quickly as it had appeared. His father's gaze slipped away, eyes focusing on the floorboards, his thoughts buried in a past he'd long deemed irretrievable. Anger flared within Jake. Anger at the wasted opportunities, at the abyss of regret that had consumed his father. Yet beneath that anger lay a deep-seated fear that his father might indeed choose apathy over evolution. "Think about Grandma and Grandpa," Jake pressed, stirring the lingering memories of their sacrifices. "Their struggles, their dreams. Are we just going to let it all vanish? This isn't just about you, Dad. It's about all of us." His father's shoulders sagged, caught in a crossfire between remorse and resignation. "I don't know if I can do it, Jake. I'm tired of losing." In that moment, Jake found himself at a crossroads. He could feel the determination coursing through him, but could he transfer that strength to his father? His own life was a puzzle of uncertainty, but he had begun assembling the pieces one by one. What if I told you that you don't have to start from scratch? You already have the tools inside you: trust, resilience, the ability to adapt. You were a fighter once, Dad. What happened to that man? He watched as a ripple of emotion crossed his father's weathered face, a mixture of anger and fear reflected in those bloodshot eyes. That man died the day he lost everything. A profound silence enveloped them, thick with unshed tears and buried pain. Jake could feel the ticking clock again, reminding him of the urgency of the moment. But he didn't. He's still in there. It's time to breathe life back into him. Life! His father scoffed, bitterness tainting his tone. For what? To let the world beat me up again? I'm not saying it will be easy. It will be hard, Jake insisted, feeling the fire building in his chest, pushing against the crumbling walls they'd both built over the years. But isn't it worth it? What if the next chapter could be different? What if we could write it together? Jake's words seemed to cut through the thick fog occupying his father's mind. There was a flicker, a hesitance giving way to something more profound. For a moment, the specter of defeat lifted, allowing a glimpse of something new. His father wiped the remnants of tears from his eyes, suddenly vulnerable. You really think it's possible? It has to be, Jake replied, urgency threading seamlessly with hope. We owe it to Grandma and Grandpa, but we also owe it to ourselves. You're still my dad, and I'm still your son. Together, we can make something of this. The air was charged, the weight of potential forgiveness hanging delicately between them. Jake realized he wasn't just fighting for his father, but also for his own freedom from the legacy of despair. But before he could draw the battle lines of a new beginning, he sensed an underlying shift, the impending storm of resistance threatening to drown them both. Was this newfound resolve of his father merely an illusion, or would it blossom into something greater? As Jake waited for an answer, the silence whispered doubt, a reminder that not all battles were won swiftly. The delicate dance of hope and fear might turn at any moment, either sprouting the seeds of transformation or reinforcing familiar despair. In that heavy pause, Jake knew that their next conversation would determine the course of their lives forever. The true test of resolve loomed ahead, dark and foreboding. Would they embrace the light of possibility, or would they retreat into old patterns that had long governed their existence? Jake felt the tension in the air like a taut string, vibrating with the unresolved conflict simmering between them. His heart raced, not just from the urgency of his father's response, but from the realization that they stood at a precipice. The path forward was unclear, fraught with the possibility of failure, yet the alternative, a continued descent into despair, was intolerable. I don't want to fight anymore. I'm done, his father mumbled, gaze still aimed downward. With each word, Jake felt as if he were losing the battle they had barely begun to fight. Then what choice are you making? Jake pressed, desperation seeping into his voice. Surrender isn't a choice, it's a trap. If you let go now, you're the only one who loses. His father flinched at the word trap. The weight of it seemed to hang in the balance, and Jake seized the moment. You still have the chance to write a new ending. Maybe not a happy one right away, but one worth fighting for, he urged, recalling the stories they used to share. Tales of resilience and hardship, the very essence of their family history. Stories that underscored their shared bloodline of warriors. But his father remained silent, trapped in shadows of his past. It was as if the weight of years pressed upon him, and the fear of not knowing how to rise again weighed him down. Jake could feel the frustration boiling. It clawed at him. How could he communicate the fire he felt inside when his father seemed content to extinguish it? In what felt like a moment of reckless courage, Jake stepped closer, lowering his voice as if sharing a precious secret. What would Grandma say if she were here? That question hung in the air, charged yet fragile. Memories of love and encouragement washed over Jake, and he could almost see the faint glimmer of a smile on his grandmother's face. She always believed in second chances. Finally, his father looked up, eyes clouded but searching. You think she'd stand by me now, after everything? Yes, Jake replied adamantly. She'd remind you that falling doesn't mean you're finished. You've stumbled, yes, but you can get back up. Think about all the music you once loved, the joy, the passion you poured into every note. Remember that feeling? Jake felt his pulse quicken further, empowered by the intimacy of shared moments. He could almost hear the melodies they used to listen to, filling their home with warmth and laughter. Those were not just sounds, but the essence of life itself. What has music become for you? A reminder of what you lost? Jake pressed. Or is it still in you? You may think no one is listening, but I am. I want to hear your song again. Let's create harmony together. This time, he saw something shift in his father's eyes, a flicker of defiance against the numbness that had gripped him. In this charged silence, Jake recognized a pang of hope becoming audible, fluttering in his father's heart like an unsteady flame yearning for air. "Do I even remember how to play?" his father finally whispered, a tentative note breaking through the heaviness. "You don't have to have all the answers," Jake replied, heart racing with each word. "Just show me one note. Let's find it together." The urgency blurred the edges of their reality, thick with potential. Jake felt the ground beneath them shift slightly, the foundations that had once seemed set in stone now trembling. Like a fragile seed cracking open to reach the light, they were on the brink of unfolding something beautiful. But as Jake absorbed this moment of newfound resolve, he sensed another storm brewing inside his father, a struggle against forces that ran deeper than their immediate discourse. Would the struggle manifest as an attempt to reclaim his past? Or would it bubble over, threatening to drown the fragile optimism Jake had managed to stir? The question lingered, a dark cloud overshadowing the flicker of hope. Jake held his breath, anxious for the truth to emerge, knowing that whatever path they chose next could shift the course of their lives irrevocably. Jake's heart thudded in his chest as he met his father's searching gaze, a mixture of fear and hope swirling inside him. He was acutely aware that they teetered on the brink of transformation, yet the chaos within his father loomed like an unseen beast, clawing at the edges of their fragile optimism. "Just one note," Jake insisted, his voice steady, yet filled with an urgency that felt more like a lifeline being thrown into turbulent waters. Inside, he felt a burgeoning determination, a clarity of purpose rising within him. He would not retreat into silence. He had finally summoned the courage to confront the depths of their emotional chasm. "Music," his father finally said, as if tasting the word for the first time in years. I haven't touched a guitar in ages." The admission hung heavy between them, laden with the weight of forgotten moments. Jake saw the flicker of nostalgia cross his father's features, but the shadows remained. "What if you could reclaim that?" Jake probed, igniting the flicker into something more. "Not just the music, what if you could reclaim yourself?" The challenge hung in the air, a declaration that demanded action. Jake could sense the wrestle within his father, every muscle tensed with the memory of abrupt silence. Was it fear that held him back? Or was it a belief that his rebirth was beyond reach? "I don't know how," his father murmured at last, a confession that felt both like surrender and an opening. "Then let's figure it out together," Jake replied, his resolve hardening. "You taught me how to face my fears, how to look at the storm and dive into it. Show me that courage again." In surrendering his uncertainty, Jake inadvertently peeled back layers of his own fear. A newfound understanding flooded through him. Not only was he fighting for his father, but he was also unearthing his own potential. Each shared moment with his father had been a lesson, and now that legacy belonged to him as much as it did to the man before him. "Let's just get something tangible, a guitar, an old book, anything that can remind you. You have melodies inside you." Jake's urgency surged again, tinged with a frantic vibrancy, driving him forward. His father's gaze sharpened as he reassessed, igniting a spark of rebellion against his own inertia. "You think the world still has music for me, after all I've lost?" Jake swallowed hard, debating the conviction in his own voice as he countered. "If you give up, you'll lose it all. But if you try, even if it's just for a moment, you might discover something new. Something you didn't realize was always inside, waiting." Silence enveloped them, a pregnant pause where the air crackled, thick and ripe with possibility. Suddenly, overwhelmed by both fear and thrill, Jake caught a glimpse of what was unfolding within his father, a reflection of his own rising determination. "Maybe?" His father's voice trailed off as he grappled with the unease battling against hope. "Let's take the first step together." Jake reached out instinctively, caught in a moment that felt almost ceremonial. This was a pivot point, a defining choice to believe in what could be resurrected, or to fall into the shadows forever. Then just as suddenly, the door creaked open behind them, a noise jarring and unwelcome, dousing the fragile atmosphere. The familiar voice of his mother broke in, and with it came the chaotic energy of regret and desperation. "What's happening here?" As her eyes scanned the intensity of their confrontation, Jake felt the tension snap back tight. The specter of uncertainty now recast through the lens of their mother, uncertain in the face of potential change. Would they even have the chance to reshape their story now? The impact of an unanticipated confrontation surged through him, another mountain to climb. As Jake turned back towards his father, he wondered about the hidden truths that lurked in the shadows of regret, and whether they would find the strength to confront what lay ahead, or if they would succumb once again to the weight of the past. The question remained suspended in that charged air. The moments of realization and regret seemed ready to collide, and within that conflict lay both their challenges and their possibilities. Would they seize the moment that could reforge their bond, or would they crumble further into despair? Jake's gaze shifted from his father to his mother, a wave of apprehension crashing over him. She stood in the doorway, an emblem of both their family's history and the binding force holding them captive to the past. The worry etched into her features was palpable, a mirror to the trepidation swirling within him. "What is going on here?" she pressed, the tremor in her voice underscoring the unsteady ground beneath them. Jake fought against the instinct to retract, to hide the burgeoning conversations and revelations that threatened to emerge from the depths of their deepest shadows. Instead, he stood firm, anchored by the weight of his own commitment to sparking change. "Mom, just give us a minute," he demanded, the roughness in his voice surprising even himself. The word "us" took on new meaning, binding both him and his father in a shared quest for reclamation, and it felt essential to assert that bond in that moment. His mother faltered but didn't retreat. "Jake, you know how fragile he is right now. He can't be pushed like this," she cautioned, her eyes darting between father and son, hunting for defensiveness she could strike to shield herself from potential heartbreak. "Just like I didn't know he could be pushed past the hurt, past the silence." Jake felt the heat of his own vulnerability surging. With every word, he unearthed a deeper resolve. Part of him was urging her to embrace the possibility, not just for his father, but for herself too. Let him go. The firmness in his own tone startled him, vulnerability transformed into an unexpected strength. This is his chance to take a risk, just as I had to learn to take risks for myself. His mother's brow furrowed deeply, and a flicker of doubt crossed her face. But what if he fails? What if he gets hurt again? Jake's pulse quickened at the unyielding depth of that question. What if we never try? What if we stay locked in this sorrow forever? The echoes of his mother's fears reverberated against Jake's own inner dialogues, awakening a sense of urgency. He had been on the precipice of setting out on his own path for too long, and today wasn't about just his father. It was about confronting the haunting silence that had ensnared them all. Turning to his father, who had become still amidst the banter, Jake stepped forward, claiming the space as his own, kneeling beside him. "Dad, I know this is scary. Look, we both know how crippling fear can be, but wouldn't it be better to try and fail at something meaningful than to live in this shell of existence?" The weight of expectation shifted. Jake felt the pulse of possibility in the air between them. He searched his father's expression, looking for that hint of recognition, begging for the spark of defiance within him to ignite. "I don't want to fail you, Jake." The admission trembled forth from his father, a raw vulnerability that sent tremors through Jake's heart. "It's part of the process," he replied gently. "Each note, each strum may not be perfect, but the act itself, that's where healing can begin." A flicker ignited within his father's gaze, casting aside the visage of defeat for just a moment. Jake held on to that flicker for dear life, ready to fan it into a flame. "Just one note," Jake repeated, almost as a mantra. "Let's at least hear that sound together, even if just once." He stood slowly, gesturing toward the old guitar that leaned against the wall, largely ignored but not forgotten. Silence settled in a fragile truce, thickening the air. Jake sensed the tides shifting. It was an invitation for rebirth, a doorway to a previously untraveled path. The scene before him became a mirror reflecting a larger truth. It wasn't merely about music. It was about forging ahead, about breaking the chains of despair that had gripped their family for too long. As he watched his father's eyes flit from the guitar to him, Jake felt the fragile nature of hope pulling them both toward the edge of transformation. Yet, the uncertainty lingered thick as fog. Unsettling thoughts whispered that change, though necessary, could bring more to lose than to gain. Before Jake could unravel the depth of that fear, his mother interrupted again, her voice now softer. "Are we really going to do this?" Jake nodded, the answer binding him to a truth he couldn't ignore. "Yes, we are. We are ready to try." But deep inside, Jake wondered if they truly could leap across this sudden divide. Would this moment pull them firmly into the light, or send them spiraling back into darkness? The question hung heavy in the air, the weight of potential stunning each of them into contemplation. As they stood on the precipice, ready to take a step into the unknown, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that just beyond the door was not only music, but revelations waiting to be uncovered. Would they be brave enough to enter that realm together? The atmosphere thickened as Jake focused on his father's trembling hands, poised yet reluctant above the guitar string. It felt like he was watching a clock wind down, each passing second echoing an inner conflict, fear tangled with hope. Behind Jake, his mother hovered, caught in her own web of worry, as if the moment could fracture their family further, or perhaps finally knit them closer. "Dad," Jake said, his voice steadying like the steady hand of a carpenter shaping wood. "This isn't just about notes or chords. It's about sharing a moment of vulnerability. It's about breaking down walls." He searched for the right words, a lifeline between them. "You taught me the value of connection, right? Let's connect through this together." His father flicked his gaze up, meeting Jake's eyes for the first time in what felt like eons. There was a fleeting recognition, a glimpse of shared memories, the sound of laughter, evenings spent on the porch, and a childhood strewn with guitar melodies. Yet layers of despair and regret overshadowed those moments, encasing them in a fog of silence. I don't know if I can," his father mumbled, a deep tremor betraying his resolve. "Maybe that uncertainty is exactly what we need to embrace," Jake pressed, an unexpected fire igniting within him. "It's okay to falter. We can create something real from that vulnerability." The weight of Jake's pleading sank deep into his father's chest, pulling at the threads of his hesitance. For too long, he had hidden behind the excuses of protection, of fear. Jake was beginning to realize that addressing his father's apprehensions wasn't merely about coaxing him to play. It was about stripping away the layers of despair that had bound them in silence. It was a recalibration of their relationship, one that required vulnerability from both sides. In that tense moment, Jake's mother stepped forward, an unexpected ally. "You know, when we faced loss, it tore us apart, but trying to hold it all in only deepened the sadness. Maybe opening up, the music, it could help us find a path back to each other." Her voice trembled, underlining the sincerity behind her words. Jake's heart raced as his father looked at her, the old wounds revealed in hesitant glances. Did he recognize that they were all standing at the edge of a chasm, ready to leap together? "All right," his father finally spoke, the tremor shifting from defeat to reluctant resolve. "Just one note, like you said." Jake's breath hitched in his throat, adrenaline coursing through him. He could feel the harness of history loosening, the chains of sadness beginning to rattle and fall away. He stepped back, giving his father space, yet keeping his own presence solid beside him. With a shaky hand, his father reached for the guitar, fingers brushing against the weathered strings. Jake regarded him with a fierce tenderness, reminding himself that this singular moment held the power to rewrite their narrative. A son guiding his father home through the embrace of music. As the first note rang out, imperfect and wavering, it sliced through the tension like a knife through fog. Their eyes met again, and although the sound was uncertain, Jake felt a shift, a ripple of something burgeoning beneath the surface. Hope felt malleable, like clay awaiting formation. Yet before the reverberations could settle, his father's face transformed. Fear twisted with something darker, a confusion, a suspicion. What if this isn't enough? What if it just reminds us of what we lost? The weight of that question swirled in the air like a specter, bridging both opportunity and reluctance. Could hope coexist with lingering shadows? Jake's heart raced with uncertainty. Would they step deeper into this delicate threshold of discovery? Or would they retreat once again into the silence that had haunted them for too long? The strum of the guitar faded, leaving only the breathless space of tension between them. Jake grappled with the weight of expectation, questioning whether this was truly the start of something new, or merely an echo of what hadn't changed. As this revelation loomed, the door behind them creaked, an unsettling reminder of unexamined truths waiting to burst forth. Would they be ready to face their past together, embrace the fragmented chords of their history, or would they fall back into the gravitational pull of despair? Jake felt the heaviness of the moment pressing down on him, the weight of his father's fear permeating the air. The single note hung between them, vibrating like a heartbeat, their connection dancing on the precipice of collapse. He sensed a storm brewing within his father, an emotional turmoil that could either catalyze healing or obliterate the fragile progress they had made. "Dad," he urged gently, matching the trembling uncertainty of the moment with steady resolution, "what if we turned this fear into something more? What if we allowed it to guide us instead of holding us back?" Jake's voice held a note of defiance against the rising tide of despair, and he hoped it would resonate as deeply within his father as it did within himself. For a heartbeat, everything was suspended as his father sought refuge in the subdued light of reminiscence. Jake could almost picture him as a boy, fascinated while strumming his first guitar on that back porch. But now, that boy lay buried beneath years of regret and unfinished dreams masked by silence. "Jake," his father began, his voice laced with old tremors, "I spent so much time trying to protect us from the pain, afraid to revisit those moments. Playing guitar was my escape from everything, but it also became a reminder of what I couldn't face." Jake's pulse quickened. This was the first sign of vulnerability, a crack in the shell. "But you don't have to go back there alone. We can forge something new?" He took a small step closer, his father's hesitation mirrored by Jake's own anxiety. In that moment of longing, his father's eyes flared with a flickering ember of determination. "I'll try, but it's terrifying." "It should be," Jake admitted, the warmth of courage spilling from his heart. "We're standing on shaky ground, but sometimes that's where true strength is found. Wouldn't you rather try than remain stuck in the past?" As his father grappled with his emotions, Jake released a slow breath, a subtle signal of commitment to this shared undertaking. This was about them, their legacy. He could feel the fragile threads of connection weaving tighter, stringing together their tremulous hearts. Jake returned his gaze to the guitar, examining the strings in a way that transformed them into symbols of a broken connection, some worn, others fragile but still capable of producing music. "What if we played together, just a few chords? No expectations, just an expression of where we are right now?" His father's silence echoed, breaking only when the regret hardened into resolve. "All right, let's try, but I don't know what will come of it." The slight tremor in his father's hands seemed to lessen, a testament that recognition was dawning, a shared struggle bridging the gap of silence. With apprehension reigning in both hearts, Jake lifted the guitar and positioned it between them. "I'll start with something simple." His fingers wandered over the strings as they settled into a familiar progression, a song echoing the rhythm of their history. As the first notes ignited the air, Jake stole glances at his father, searching for signs of inhibition or fear. The notes, pure and unadulterated, enveloped them, ushering in an intimacy that had eluded them for far too long. Layer upon layer of anxiety began to dissolve, replaced by the sweet sound of a tentative harmony. But then the door creaked again, this time with an unsettling urgency. Jake's heart dropped. He had thought they'd reached a sanctuary, yet the ghost of their past hovered threateningly at the threshold. Shadows of memories and obstacles beckoned just outside. Would confronting the echoes of their hurt solidify their newfound courage or dismantle it altogether? His father's face fell into a mask of concern. What was that? The moment of shared music splintered as anxiety stiffened the air once again. "Whatever is behind that door," Jake said, struggling to amplify conviction through the tight knot in his stomach, "we have to face it, together." The guitar fell silent, and all that remained was the knot of conflicting emotions that coiled within Jake. Would confronting the past fortify their bond, or send them spiraling back into the void from which they were trying so hard to escape? He steeled himself, recognizing that the true challenge was just beginning. The door loomed before them like a guardian of their truths, a reminder that they could no longer hide. Behind it lay the revelations that would either heal or shatter. Jake reached for the handle, knowing that the only way to reclaim their narrative was to plunge into whatever awaited them on the other side. Would they emerge united, or were they destined to remain prisoners of their silence? Jake's heart raced as he clutched the cool metal handle, the uncertainty flooding his veins. He felt the weight of his father's unresolved fears pressing against him like a physical force, a counterpoint to his own determination. This moment was pivotal. It was the fulcrum upon which their lives might pivot toward healing or lean deeper into despair. He glanced at his father, who stood frozen, a portrait of apprehension etched in every inch of his furrowed brow. "It's time, Dad," Jake stated, focusing all his resolve into the simplicity of those words. The years of avoidance hung like cobwebs between them, rustling with the slightest breath of confrontation. Taking a deep breath, Jake twisted the handle, pushing the heavy door open. Inside was a dimly lit room, scattered with remnants of their past. Old photographs, dusty trophies, and shadowy memories wrapped in layers of neglect. The musty air felt heavy with unspoken truths, yet it was lightened by the faint warmth of the mid-afternoon sun spilling through a cracked window. "All this," Jake murmured, stepping inside, "it's just stuff, Dad, but what lies beneath it? That's what we need to explore." The room felt like a metaphor for their relationship, a compendium of dreams once cherished, now buried beneath the weight of silence and abandonment. His father hesitated before entering, every step measured, as if each movement might unleash a flood of buried sorrows. "It's hard to look at all this," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought, and hoped, if I just packed it away I could forget." "Forget or avoid?" Jake countered softly, sensing the duality of his father's admission. He began to sift through the items, each piece a fragment of their shared narrative. His fingers traced the edges of an old guitar pick, a reminder of his father's zest for music that had faded into obscurity. "This was part of you, Dad, part of us." As Jake held it up, a flicker of recognition sparked in his father's eyes. "I loved playing. It was an escape, but it felt like a betrayal to the pain I carried." "Maybe playing isn't the betrayal," Jake suggested, his own voice gaining clarity as he spoke. "Maybe it's a way back to who you really are." He felt his father's tension begin to loosen as they confronted what lay within the room, remnants of joy shadowed by unwelcome memories. Their journey into the cluttered space mirrored their internal struggle. With each item they unearthed, Jake felt the stirrings of something dormant within him. He had always viewed their shared music as a tether. Now he began to recognize the creative spark that had flickered in his own heart, fed by this poignant father-son excavation. For every picture, every trophy dredged from the depths of neglect, the memories churned, a mix of warmth and heartache. Jake marveled at the fragility of their past and how it sculpted their presence. The challenge was to embrace it, allowing old scars to breathe into new melodies. "What if we—" Jake hesitated, the suggestion felt monumental, weighty as granite. "What if we play right here, right now, use this to build something new?" His father's gaze locked on him, a spark igniting in his eyes. "Right here, with all this?" "Yes, let's start with our truth. Let's turn this place into our studio, our sanctuary, where the music reunites what was broken." The thought energized Jake, a fresh perspective flickering to life. His father took a deep breath, glancing at the scattered relics of their shared history. "Okay, maybe it's time." They set down the remnants of their past, picking up pieces of instruments still gathering dust. For the first time, Jake could feel a shift, like the formation of chords in a song that resonated with hope. They were not merely sifting through memories, but rather reaching for the potential that lay thick within the dust. Neither spoke as they began to jam, their fingers moving instinctively, reuniting with the music that once echoed in their lives. Each chord rang out, a blend of discovery, reclamation, and an acknowledgement of their intricate bond. Only halfway through their improvisation, Jake's mind filled with doubt. Were they merely playing through the pain, or was this the beginning of their rebirth? A sudden loud crash interrupted them, causing them to leap apart, hearts racing from fear. What else awaited them in this room? A monstrous truth or a reassuring warmth? Jake turned to his father, awaiting the solace of their strengthened bond, wondering if, despite the darkness, their music could lead them to the light they so desperately sought. As the dust settled from the abrupt crash, Jake and his father exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. There, amidst the chaos of old memories and scattered dreams, they found a solidarity that had eluded them for years. Both men felt the weight of their choice to face the darkness together, a palpable shift in their dynamic, igniting new possibilities. Behind every crash there's a chance to rebuild, Jake mused, grounding himself in the moment. We can't escape the noise of our past, but we can learn to play through it. His father's eyes softened, the moment offering a glimpse of hope amid the uncertainty. They resumed their makeshift harmony, fingers working through the strings with a rhythm that felt oddly right, despite the tension still lingering in the air. Each note reverberated around the room, filling the corners once lost to abandonment with a renewed sense of purpose. In this fragile, yet empowering symphony, Jake found his voice, one filled with urgency and determination. We've been living in the shadows of everything that's happened, but playing together can light the path ahead. It's now or never to reclaim this legacy, Dad. What if it's not enough? His father questioned, the vulnerability in his tone ringing clear. What if it's just another moment we fall short of achieving? Jake's heart raced. That's the point. It's not about perfection, it's about connection. Each time we play, we build trust and create new memories. We let the music serve as a bridge. With that, something shifted in his father. You're right, he whispered with newfound determination, plucking a few strings as if reawakening long-dormant talent. This is what I used to love. I want it back. The air thrummed with energy as the music wrapped around them like a warm embrace, stitching together the rips in the fabric of their relationship. Each chord became a pulse, a renewed heartbeat resonating against the walls that once held only despair. They took turns pushing the melody forward, each note unearthing emotions buried beneath layers of regret. Fear, joy, and profound vulnerability began to intermingle as their music wove through the cluttered room. They were undulating, falling into the rhythm, and reminding each other of the tender glimmers of hope they could grasp. As Jake began to harmonize, he caught sight of the vibrant glint in his father's eyes. It was a flicker of recognition. The man who had once strummed songs with joyful intensity had begun to awaken. You see, he encouraged, this is where real healing happens. Underscored by their improvisation, revelations emerged as the layers of mistrust fell away, cutting through the silence that had defined their history. For the first time, Jake found himself free from the burdens of resentment. He was no longer the son of a broken man, but a partner in rediscovering lost potential. Joy can exist alongside sorrow, Jake asserted, feeling the truth of their shared narrative solidifying. You're not defined by what you've lost, you're now defined by what you're willing to rebuild. With those words, his father strummed a vibrant chord, and the guitar seemed to resonate with the very air in the room, echoing Jake's sentiments. He was starting to remember the power of the music they once shared, the laughter that had filled their home. This was beginning to nourish the cracks within, but to say it was easy would negate the complexity of their journey. Old fears flickered like shadows, threatening to creep back in whenever either faltered. Jake felt the tension rise intermittently, yet within those moments of struggle, they each committed to forming something less defined by their pain. Let's not shy away from the messy bits, Jake proposed, his voice inflected with raw sincerity. What if each mistake becomes a note we learn from? What if we transform chaos into music, heal from the dissonance? His father's brow furrowed momentarily, with hesitation. Then, as if struck by inspiration, he met Jake's gaze. I'm tired of being afraid, he admitted, an explosion of honesty cracking through. Let's face it together. The conviction resonated within Jake, robust and unwavering. That's it. Let's celebrate the struggle and use it as fuel. Our mistakes will make us stronger, forge our unity into something unbreakable. As they continued playing, the room pulsated with the vibration of their new understanding. They were two musicians, no longer bound by fear or regret, but rather liberated by the purpose they were creating. With every strum, Jake felt renewed confidence swelling within him, an unshakable belief that they were both on the path to recovery and growth. In an unexpected crescendo, they erupted into laughter, a sweet sound that banished lingering doubts, signaling a moment of realization. Sharing that joy, they understood they were reshaping their legacy in ways neither had anticipated. As the final note reverberated through the air, Jake turned to his father, awash with gratitude. "We've just begun, Dad. This is our first step, but imagine where we'll be next." "Together," his father echoed, the strength in his voice affirming the solidarity they had forged. "I can do this. I want to rediscover who I am, who we are." That night, they transformed the cluttered room into a sanctuary, reclaiming old memories and weaving new melodies from the remnants of their shared legacy. Elation washed over Jake, the realization that they were beginning not only to heal, but also redefining who they were as individuals and as a family. In the weeks to come, they played together often, letting music rise from the ashes of despair, ushering in a new chapter. With every note, their relationship grew stronger, and Jake could proudly witness his father reclaiming what had once been lost, finding purpose anew amid the echoes of their past. Their journey was far from over, yet the path ahead sparkled with promise, proving that in confronting the shadows of guilt and sadness, they had discovered light, connection, and an enduring bond born of resilience and unconditional love. Through music, they learned that every sound carries the potential to bridge chasms too deep, to embrace the fragments of their lives, and build a future based on understanding and compassion. As Jake stood beside his father, he realized they were not just playing the notes. They were rewriting their story, day by day, transforming pain into harmony and reclaiming their legacy with each powerful chord. The mountains bore witness to their triumph, and as the sun set on their small Colorado town, there was finally a radiant warmth where the shadows of uncertainty once dwelled. This was not just a resolution, it was rebirth, and together, they were ready for whatever chapters lay ahead. Now, as this journey reaches its thrilling conclusion, each of you has the chance to carry this message forward. You need to subscribe now to our channel and join this vibrant community. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to fuel our growth and reach hearts yearning for stories of personal evolution. Comment below with your reactions and theories about the journey we've just witnessed. Finally, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this empowering conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of spreading the message.